Let's dive into it. We had two intriguing games last night, so let's start there. It is our big story, the Wednesday night hoops action, and we start with another impressive outing from Michigan State. The 10th-ranked Spartans moved to 4-0 in the Big Ten. They're 13-2 overall. Took down Nebraska 79-67. They got 14 in this game from Gabe Brown, career-high 21 from the freshman Max Christie as well. It was the Spartans' 8th straight win, 9th in a row against the Huskers, who fell to 0-4 in the league. We talked about this a bit last night, and Andy Katz was making the case a little bit for Michigan State as the Big Ten's best team. I mean, I certainly still believe in Purdue, and we'll get into them a little bit later. I know they're 1-2 in the league. They're ranked 3rd in the country. I think Illinois is really, really good. I think Ohio State's good. Where do you think Michigan State fits into that picture?
Yeah, you got Illinois, Purdue, Ohio State. I think Michigan State is playing the best right now. They have the most cohesive group out there. They understand assignments. Tom Izzo is really coaching them up. They're getting better every single game. Turnovers aside, they're shooting the ball better every game. They're rebounding harder. They're defending better. Gabe Brown might have had his best defensive performance of his career last night. Everything is really coming into order for this Michigan State team right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. They do seem like a cohesive group. I still am astonished by the turnovers. I mean, I just think when you turn the ball over more than a quarter of the time, it's hard. I mean, you have to do all those other things well, and they shot great last night. They shot 52% from the field, 47% from three-point range. But if you have a game like that and you shoot in the 30s like they did the other day against Northwestern, now they managed to pull that game out. But again, I do worry about that a little bit, but I'm with you. I'm with you on Gabe Brown, and we talked about him a bit last night, but he has really emerged as a force here, and I think he is a testament, Rafael, to patience, to believing in good coaching, to sticking with it. He has become one of the better players in this league.
No, 100%. And that's the thing you said, he stuck with it. He didn't sulk in it. He didn't cry about his first couple of years coming off the bench, not playing as much as he wanted to. He stuck to the system. He believed in Tom Izzo. He believed in what Michigan State wanted from him, and now he's reaping the benefits. He plays hard. He plays with a lot of energy. He plays with passion on both ends. He shoots the ball well. He gets his teammates involved. I loved at the end of the game last night through the handshaking line, you see him with the freshman Max Christie wanting to get him some attention. So he's a great teammate, great locker room guy. He's exactly who you would want on your team, and he's making a strong point to be on a Big Ten team.
Max Christie's getting his own attention, too. He is really smooth. He's already been Big Ten Freshman of the Week 3 times. He's starting to make a case, I think, for number 4, given his start to this week. What stands out to you as you watch his game? In a year that, frankly, doesn't have a ton of great freshmen in the Big Ten. I think we thought some of the Michigan freshmen maybe a little bit further advanced than they are. Bryce McGowan's is quite good for Nebraska, but Caleb First. I mean, I think we've seen a few guys here and there, but what stands out to you about Christie's game?
He's so smooth, and he takes good shots. As a freshman, shot selection is always a problem when you come in. You don't know what's a good shot, what's a bad shot. Some high school coaches don't teach that. But Max Christie takes good ones. He takes open shots. He gets into his pull-up game. He's taller than a lot of his defenders, and he plays the game the right way. He lets it come to him. He's really lethal off of Michigan State's down screen when he can come off and curl and play off of that. He knows how to read screens. If you go under, he's going to pop back. You stay tight, he's going to curl. He has the basketball IQ of a senior right now, and it's looking well right now.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and that – part of that is probably innate, and part of that is just having been really well coached at an earlier age. Of course, we know his mom was a really great college player, and so kind of all that stuff maybe builds up and turns you into a very mature player, and he seems to be that for his age. How concerned are you about the turnovers? I mean, look, Michigan State, this has been an issue on and off now for years, and they seem to have been able to overcome it. But, man, that first half yesterday, I mean, we're like halfway through the first half, and they're at 9 turnovers. Tom's red in the face. I mean, it kind of it toned down as the game went on, but still, it's just hard when you're giving the ball away that frequently.
Yeah, you go on the road to Illinois, to Ohio State, to a Purdue, you get 10 turnovers in that first half, they're going to make you pay. So, I mean, remember when I played at Purdue my sophomore year, we had a turnover issue. And coach would give us a set amount of turnovers per practice. Once you went over that turnover number, you had to run a suicide. So that kind of limited our turnover issue when we were playing. So Michigan State may implement something like that. But like you said, you can't turn the ball over at a high rate, expect to beat good teams. But if Max Christie continues to shoot 64% from 3 as he's been doing the last 3 games, it should help get them over the edge.
What do you make of the Huskers? I thought they played well. Again, second straight game. That's a tough assignment. I mean, to go in there and head to Michigan State, a place which is nearly impossible to win. But they had the disappointment against Ohio State where they kind of gave the game away. And then I thought you kind of wonder going into a game like that, well, how are they going to respond? Are they going to be buried early in this one and kind of be down? It seemed like quite the opposite. I thought they came out with some good energy, played well. What was your takeaway on it?
No, they came out 2 games in a row. They played hard. I mean, against Ohio State, they played extremely hard to keep them in the game. They didn't shoot the ball that particularly well, but them playing hard, hitting the glass really helped them. Came out with the same intensity against Michigan State. They jumped on them. They played hard. They turned Michigan State over, and then they went to the halftime. It felt like Michigan State was upset with where they were in the game. You could tell Tom Izzo got on his team, and it looked like Nebraska was where they wanted to be in the game. They felt good about it. So you can kind of see the change coming out in that second half. Michigan State really jumped on them. But Nebraska just got to find a way to make shots. They've learned how to play hard. They've learned how to play 40 minutes. Now you just got to make shots, get your guys involved, find Derek Walker a little bit more. He's shooting 78% from the field, so you got to get him some more easy baskets. But the first step is a skill that not everybody learns, is how to play hard and put together a complete 40 minutes of playing hard.
They head to Rutgers, game I know you're going to be calling on Saturday. The other game, Penn State led for less than 3 minutes, but somehow still managed to defeat Northwestern. They were down by 10 in the second half. You know Micah Shrewsbury quite well from his time at Purdue. What is it about Micah Shrewsbury that makes him special and that maybe is reflected somewhat in this team?
No, it's a few things that makes Coach Shrewsbury special. He believes in his players. He gives you the utmost confidence. He makes you feel good. You want to go out there, you want to play hard for Coach Shrews every time. And then he's an offensive genius. You saw it down the stretch. He's a coach that will get out your way. He's a coach that will call sets when he has to. And towards the end of that game, they just stuck around. They played hard, were gritty, and then Jalen Pickett just started to make plays. Coach Shrewsbury ran one play in that last 5 minutes. Jalen Pickett on the wing, ISO, kill your man. And once Jalen Pickett slowed down, picked up his 4th foul, you saw Seth Lundy get involved. Seth Lundy made 2 huge threes, got a run-out layup. And it's another thing throughout the game where you saw Miles Dredd pass up some good ones to find Seth Lundy for a great one when he knew he was feeling it. And that speaks to the maturity of this Penn State team, being the 6th oldest team in college basketball. These guys have played together a lot. They played in a lot of open gyms. Miles Dredd knows when Seth Lundy is feeling it. They understand each other's game, and the seniors play well down the stretch.
And I do think that there's something to be said for that, especially when you're inheriting a new team, that it's a group of guys, maybe who haven't all played together, but they all played a lot of games, and they have a ton of experience, and I do think that helps versus, trying to overhaul a roster with young guys. And Chris Collins made the point after the game that, hey, Penn State made some really tough shots. I mean, they were well guarded down the stretch, and yet it's kind of a familiar refrain for Northwestern. This is the 2nd straight game now where they've blown a double-digit lead. We saw it happen against Michigan State as well. This is a team that has designs of playing in the NCAA tournament again. But, yeah, the Michigan State game's one thing, but the Penn State game, frankly, you've got to win. You have to win games like that.
Yeah, you got to find a way to win that game at home. My college coach would always tell me, do what you were doing that got us the lead. And Northwestern just didn't do that in that second half. They got up big, and then they just started to do whatever. The shot selection got a little crazy. Guys were shooting when they were open, and they were open for a reason. And that's something I had to learn the hard way. Sometimes you're open, it doesn't mean shoot the ball. Sometimes they're leaving you open. And Northwestern just didn't put the ball in the right people's hand down the stretch. Pete Nance can't go a game at home, get 2 rebounds. I may be a little hard on him, but 2 rebounds isn't enough for his size, his ability, his skill set. He had a free throw down the stretch. You got to make that free throw at home. It's an all Big Ten caliber player. You got to show up at home, make your free throws. Boo Buie was great in that game, but down the stretch, he's got to take control of the pace, get them in their sets, find open guys, and win that game.
They're now 6-23 over the last 3+ years in games decided by 5 points or less or in overtime. 6-23. You've got to figure out a way to win the close games. The biggest game tonight is Iowa and Wisconsin. We're going to break this game down from just about every angle, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't dive into it here at the top of the show. I cannot wait to watch this game. Johnny Davis against Keegan Murray obviously is the highlight of it, but man, these are 2 teams in my mind that have really exceeded expectations. What has stood out about each one of these teams to this point?
Yeah, Wisconsin didn't come in the season with a lot of hype. I mean, Johnny Davis, no one expected this. And I love how Brad Davison is kind of taking that back seat. It could be his team. He could force the issue every time down the floor, but he finds Johnny Davis. He lets Johnny Davis be him. He actually referred to Johnny Davis as a killer in the media the other day. So you know they have the utmost confidence, and then their defense is always going to be Wisconsin defense. They play that pack line defense. They're going to give you as many threes as you want to take. It's up to you to make them. They're going to rebound, and they're going to play physical. I was at that Purdue game. Chris Vogt, Steven Kraut, they play physical. They both almost fouled out.
They did foul out.
Yeah, so, they used their fouls.
Yeah.
They were battling. They weren't scared. They were up for the challenge. And then Iowa with Keegan Murray. One of the best players in the country, can score the ball inside out, three-level scorer from three, mid-range, can get to the basket. With Jordan Bohannon, one of the best shooters to come through the Big Ten. Iowa surprised a lot of people. If they can get another guy to go with those two, they should be special. This could be a special matchup. Johnny Davis, Keegan Murray, and then you look at Jordan Bohannon, Brad Davison, two guys that's been in the league forever. This should be a fun one. I know we're expecting a high-scoring battle, but defense should definitely come and play tonight.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously Iowa loves to force the pace, right? They are an up-tempo team. They're an incredibly efficient offense. Wisconsin wants to slow it down a little bit more. You always hear that adage, it's easier to slow a game down than it is to speed it up. Do you believe that that is the case, and do you believe that the tempo could be one of the deciding factors?
No, 100%. If this game gets in the 80s and the 90s, this favors Iowa. They like to play fast. They like to press you a little bit, speed the game up. But if this game is around 50, 60 points, I like Wisconsin. They defend you hard, they defend you all game. If it's around 50, 60 points, that means Keegan Murray probably has half of Iowa's points. They don't have a third guy to go with them. But on the flip side, if Iowa can push it, if, say, Chris Murray steps up, Wisconsin sometimes struggles to find a third guy to score. You saw it at Ohio State when they just couldn't keep up on the offensive end. So it's one of those things where you want to slow Iowa down, but then if you're Iowa, you want to speed Wisconsin up.
Can't wait to watch it, as I said. These are two teams that, to me, I thought would maybe be fighting to be in the discussion at the end of the year for the NCAA tournament, but you just can't account for guys taking huge leaps forward. No. And that's what both Johnny Davis and Keegan Murray have done, and I know Hawkeye fans, Badger fans fired up to watch this one tonight. Plenty more on that game coming up, but we're going to turn our attention to women's hoops next. Nebraska's been one of the best stories, not just in the Big Ten, but in the nation. Their coach, Amy Williams, set to join us next.
Nebraska should be considered a top 25 team after what they have shown today.
That'll do it here in Lincoln. For the first time since 2014, Nebraska has knocked off a top 10 opponent.
What a night it was for the Huskers, knocking off number 8 Michigan. Our big interview today is Amy Williams, the head coach of Nebraska. Coach, I'm sure you've watched that back a time or two, but what goes through your mind when you hear beating a top 10 team first time in your tenure, you've done it, and you watch it again?
Yeah, it feels great. I thought that we could either, after our first loss on the season at Michigan State, kind of a one-possession game that was a tough loss, we could have either kind of sulked or found a way to really pout after that game, or we could find a way to make some improvements that we felt were necessary. So to watch our kids really dig deep and kind of bounce back and then get a big top 10 win at home in front of our incredibly passionate fan base, that was pretty special.
You mentioned the loss to Michigan State. It's your lone blemish of the year, but I think a lot of people were really interested to see how this team would respond. What did you learn about your team the other night after the fact that they did bounce back as well as they did?
Yeah, I think we learned that we've got that fight that's really important and necessary, and that we've got resilience to be able to bounce back and to learn from losses. We know that that's going to be a part of a Big Ten schedule. It's nearly impossible to go through kind of unbeaten and unblemished in this competitive league. So to be able to learn from your mistakes, find ways to use that as the greatest measure of growth, and then show that bounce back and come back stronger the next game, that's going to be an important factor for us to become the best team we're capable of becoming.
So despite your gaudy record, you were 12-1 heading into that game, 13-1 now. Your team was unranked. I think there had been some question about, well, have they really proven anything? People asking a little bit about the schedule. To what extent was not being ranked a motivating factor for your team and trying to prove to people that, hey, we are as good as our record?
That's not a motivating factor for our team inside. I think our fan base, that's really important to them. I think, in recruiting that helps, things like that. But for the most part, for our team, what we're locked in paying attention to is that, we're staying up there in the top 10 in the net ranking. And we know that schools like Drake and Creighton and Drexel and San Diego and Wake Forest on the road and teams that are top 70, top 100 net schools. Other people on the outside may not look and respect that non-conference schedule, but we absolutely do. And we know the quality of the teams that we've gone up against, and maybe none of them were ranked in the top 25, but several of them are conference champions that have NCAA tournament experience that are pushing our net, and there's a reason why we feel like, our net ranking is up there in the top 10 in the country, and we feel like that is what we need to be the most concerned about in our position.
I don't think many people from the outside saw this coming, Coach. I mean, you've been kind of a middle-of-the-pack team the last few years after you made the NCAA tournament in your second year. But since then, there have been some signs here and there, but certainly nothing along the lines of this. To what extent did you see it coming? Did you think, hey, this has a chance to be a special team?
When we brought everybody together this summer during our 8 weeks of summer access, we recognized that we had some depth, and that's usually what it takes to make a strong run in this conference. Is you can't, in a normal season, if you're not dealing with quite that depth, you have some injuries, you have some things that go a little haywire, and you have drop off. But we knew that we had the potential when we were watching practices. They were incredibly competitive, so we just really just decided to embrace that theme, and we came up with kind of a mantra of compete and connect. This team has done a great job of that, and because of that, I think we're capable of setting our expectations higher.
In this day and age, transfers are such a huge part of any team. How important has Jaz Shelley, the transfer from Oregon, been for your team?
Yeah, she's a big piece. I mean, there's no doubt about it. She makes everybody around her better. And so she's been a real catalyst. We have some great experienced players, Sam Hybe, Izzy Bourne, around her, some outstanding and exciting young players in our freshman class that have really been bringing an intensity and a spark to the table. But I think Jaz is really that catalyst. And we had a great relationship with Jaz out of high school and knew her family well from official visits when they were in Lincoln, and when I went over to Australia and had a home visit with them. And so I think when she decided to enter the transfer portal, there was a solid built relationship there and a comfort level for her at Nebraska.
Just out of curiosity, how many days does it take to take a home visit to Australia?
Yeah. Several, and getting outside your comfort zone a little bit, trying to take a rental car, driving with the steering wheel on the other side of the car and on the other side of the road, and some of that. So that was a fun experience for me.
If I were a coach, I think I'd start recruiting Australians. I know you have several on the roster, if for no other reason than to go make the home visits. I want to get into your backstory a bit. You're a Nebraska grad. What does it mean to you to be coaching and having success at your alma mater?
I've been asked this question a lot over the last 6 years, and it's just
I have no original questions, Amy.
Not so much by you, but honestly, it's just it's so hard for me to put into words what it really means to be back at a school that I took so much pride in being able to wear that Nebraska across my chest as a player, and to be back here and leading this program and to be doing it alongside several other alum. Scott Frost and I both played in the same era, but our head softball coach, our head gymnastics coach, and now Trev Alberts, all alum of this incredible athletic department and back, leading. I think there's just a little extra that you want to pour in when it's the same program that you've poured your blood, sweat, and tears into for several years. And I feel honored and blessed and just really excited to be back home.
I noticed that you majored in biology and math. Now, as a European history major sportscaster, I can relate to this, that we don't always major in exactly what our career path ends up being. But what would you be doing if you weren't coaching basketball?
Well, I had taken my MCATs and I was applying to med school. I was on my way. I thought that's what my path was. And when I called my parents and said, I think I want to coach basketball, my mom said, you want to what? But my dad was a basketball coach my whole life. I don't even remember any memories before going to the gym, getting shots up, being in the gym with him. And so I think he understands. It's just been in my blood and part of who I am. So I can't really see anything else other than doing what I love to do every day.
It's interesting. You mentioned your dad is a high school coach and was the coach at your high school. Your sister is having a great year as well. She's the head coach at Minnesota State. To what extent do you lean on one another during challenging coaching times where you say, hey, I wonder how my dad would respond. I wonder how my sister would respond.
Well, pretty heavy. I talk to my dad at least once a day, and he always has lots of opinions and advice.
Solicited or unsolicited?
A little bit of both. And I just had about a 2-hour conversation with my sister the other day where we were just going back and forth and sharing ideas, just how to lead, drills. We talk about how long does it take your kids to run this sprint drill or this, and we're constantly sharing ideas about that stuff. But probably the most important conversations we have are just about leading and particularly through the challenging times with COVID and everything over the last couple of years. She's been a great resource for me.
I know your daughter Kennedy is an outstanding high school athlete in several different sports. She is being recruited as well right now. I don't want you to commit any recruiting violations talking about a potential student athlete here. I don't know what the rules are when she lives in your house and you provide her with every meal. But what's it like to be on the other side of that recruiting process? I assume that will be an easier home visit than going to Australia.
Yeah, I would think so. Yes. The one thing that is so rewarding and enjoyable for me to watch her do what she loves to do, and what a great competitor, and to see that kind of come into fruition for her and to help her kind of walk through the process and just be a mentor is it's actually very rewarding, and I just am excited for her future.
You got Iowa coming up this week. I'd be remiss if I did not ask you about guarding Caitlin Clark. What's the challenge there?
Do you have any pointers for me?
I do not. I'd say call your dad or your sister. Yeah.
Yes, I know. I mean, that's just an impossible task, is, how you're going to guard Caitlin Clark. It's just, all you can do is just really do your best to try to slow it down and make it as difficult as possible. But every time we thought that we knew how to make it as difficult as possible, she finds some other way to surprise me. And, what a special player she is. But it's just going to take a great team effort. And we're going to have to run different people. There's going to be a lot of people on our team that get an opportunity to try, and we'll try to mix up the different looks on her and just see if we can slow her down.
Coach, this was a ton of fun. Congratulations again on the win and all the success this year, and we're looking forward to watching the Huskers here in the days and weeks to come.
Thanks so much. Happy New Year.
Same to you. Turn our attention back to the men next. We were talking earlier about the huge showdown between Wisconsin and Iowa. We've got beat writers from both sides to help us break this one down next. We have been raving all year about the individual superstars in the Big Ten. It's really quite remarkable. The top 3 scorers in the nation all play in this conference. Keegan Murray leading the way, Kofi Cockburn just behind him, and Johnny Davis is third. And we are in for a treat tonight. Number 1 and number 3 going head-to-head, 9 Eastern on FS1. We're going to preview this game from both sides, and let's start with the Wisconsin angle. Jeff Potrykus covers the Badgers for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. He joins us now. And Jeff, I was talking with Rafael Davis earlier in the show, and to me, as I looked at this Wisconsin team coming into the year, it's such a veteran team last season, and it felt like it would be not necessarily a rebuilding year, but I didn't necessarily see them competing at the very top of the Big Ten. I did not, for instance, see them going into Mackey Arena and winning for just the 6th time in 46 all-time visits there. Are you surprised by how good Wisconsin has been to this point?
Yeah, I don't think it's a stretch if you would have said at the beginning of the year, this could be a rebuilding year for them. I mean, they lost so many seniors. You had 8 new faces, more than a half dozen new faces, a lot of them freshmen. And as good as you thought Johnny Davis would be good, but I really had no idea, and a lot of people didn't either, how all the new pieces would mesh, including a couple transfers. So I think they have surpassed expectations to this point, outside expectations, because I don't think anyone really had any idea how this team would mesh.
One of the things that's been really interesting to me, Jeff, and I did the game against Indiana where they had the big comeback, and of course nobody panicked in that game, and you just get the sense they're really well connected. And in talking to Greg Gard, he said the same thing. We don't need to rehash the tape that was released over the summer, but I think it's fair to conclude that last year's team perhaps wasn't all that well connected. Why do you think it's different this year? Why do you think the chemistry is different in this group than what they had a year ago?
Well, I think it's a completely different team. I mean, first of all, and I think they made a change on the coaching staff. I think Sharif Chambliss has really helped in that regard. And you've got a lot of players who are, because they're younger, they're willing to be coached. And that's not a criticism of the old players from last year. Please don't take it as that. But this staff is doing a lot more teaching, especially early in the year. And you've got a lot of mentally tough guys. And I don't know that you could anticipate that. Because if you mentioned the Indiana game, they were down 16 early. Texas A&M came back to win in Las Vegas. Down 10 against St. Mary's, came back to win that game. Down 7 at Purdue in the second half, came in to win that game. The Indiana game was 20 or 22 in the first half. That doesn't just happen. That is within each individual to be mentally tough. And then you've put that group together and you've got a really tough-minded, resilient team that does not panic.
We mentioned Johnny Davis and his scoring totals off the top, and of course he's going to be in the spotlight here tonight going head-to-head with Keegan Murray. What has impressed you the most about Johnny Davis's game?
You know, it's interesting. You saw flashes of it last year. And I think Stephen Bardo even said on one of the telecasts, if you watch this guy, at some point he's going to be the best player in the Big Ten. I'm not sure Stephen realized it was going to be potentially this year. He realized with all the seniors gone, this team needed someone to be the alpha dog, to step up. He is clearly ready for that role. His three-point shooting, interestingly, is down from last year, a few percentage points, but his two-point shooting is up. I think he's hit some tougher shots. He's taken better shots. Sometimes he forced some shots a little bit last year. And his defense is fantastic. The other night against Jaden Ivey at Purdue, he played fantastic defense against an outstanding player. So when you've got a guy who's willing to exert just as much effort and cares just as much on the defensive end as he is about putting the ball through the hoop, that's a pretty damn good example for the rest of your team.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. You're scoring nearly 40 points, and you're guarding one of the most explosive players in the country on the other end. It really speaks volumes about the effort and about kind of believing in that you got to play hard on both ends of the court. Speaking of defense, how do you believe they will defend Keegan Murray tonight?
Well, you know, we talked to Dean Oliver, who obviously played at Iowa and had the scout for this game, and he basically said, I'm sure what he said is the same thing the Iowa people were saying about Johnny Davis. You're not going to stop him with one guy. It's got to be a team effort. If Keegan Murray beats the initial defender, there's got to be help side. There's got to be guys willing to slow him down. I don't think Wisconsin has any idea that they're going to shut Keegan Murray down because he can score at every level and he's so efficient. But you just have to make him work tough for his shots, similar to what they did against Purdue's big guys. Just make them work tough, make them take tough shots. Don't give them easy baskets, especially early, which can, then the basket becomes it's so wide. Every shot that you take, you think it's going to go in. You got to make them work hard, especially early in the game.
Should be fun to watch. Jeff, thanks so much for your time. Good to visit with you.
You too, Dave. Thank you.
We were talking about Davis and Murray, both getting a ton of national acclaim, both with spots on the Wooden Award midseason top 25 watch list. This was released yesterday. It's a 25-man list, and the Big Ten, as you can see, has 9 of the players. So that is fully 36% from one league. Not bad. And again, Davis and Murray in the spotlight, of course, tonight. Let's get the other side of this matchup now from Kennington Smith, who covers the Hawkeyes for the Des Moines Register. Kennington, the story of this year for Iowa has been Keegan Murray. What has stood out to you about his game as you've seen him kind of emerge and become a superstar?
Right. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. And you have it exactly right. A storyline of this year and what's really defined Iowa's season so far is how Keegan Murray's been able to break out from a productive bench player to one of the best players in the country. And what's really stood out to me is the elements of his offensive game that are starting to flourish. We saw it a little bit last year, but really his role was to play good defense, to get rebounds, to get putbacks, and really just provide high energy plays. This year, transitioning into the number one offensive role, we've seen him improve his shooting numbers, excellent finishing around the rim. He's a force in the paint. And then against Maryland with 35 points, tying a career high, we saw a little bit more of his offensive game start to expand. We saw him hit some fadeaways. He's starting to knock down some face-up jump shots. So what's really impressing me is just how he's been able to elevate offensively. Nation's leading scorer, which we had questions about coming into this year. We knew he was talented. We knew he had the two-way potential, but we really didn't know how advanced he was going to be offensively, and to see him progress and really develop into a projected lottery pick at this point in the season, I think is really what's most impressive.
Yeah, I think that's what's so remarkable. It's one thing to have the skills, Kennington. There are a lot of guys, as you know, that are out there that have skills, but to be able to kind of walk into that role right away. I mean, you have a National Player of the Year in Luka Garza, so you lose arguably the best player in the country, and you replace him with, as you said, a guy who we saw some signs from last year. You certainly knew he was going to be a talented player and one of the focal points of this team. But I think there's so much to be said for kind of being able to be in that role and to play that role right away. I mean, that is the thing that has struck me. What has Fran McCaffrey said, or what have you gleaned about kind of his specific mental makeup that has allowed him to kind of take that jump, not the physical part of it, but to be the focal point of a team after being a complementary player around arguably the best player in the country?
Exactly. This is something that we've asked him about from summertime up until this point. And one thing about Keegan Murray is he's a quiet person. He's pretty laid back, and Fran McCaffrey has said as much, but he's never lacking in confidence. And something that he said at the beginning of the year up until now is he understands the role that he has to play for this team. He understood that his role last year was to be more of a role player and assist Luka Garza and Joe Wiecamp and guys like that. And this year he knew that he was going to have to step into that number one role. And he's done so flawlessly. He said the other night that he has put in the repetition. He did a lot of game-like reps during the offseason and in practice, and he's seeing that kind of manifest itself in the game. He said that there aren't many shots that he doesn't like, and we're seeing that. And he has the confidence in himself, and the teammates have confidence in him as well. They're feeding him the ball. They're getting it to him. They understand that he's the top player, and they have to get him going in order for Iowa to be successful. So it's honestly be a seamless transition. He's an older kid, a 21-year-old sophomore, very mature, did a postgraduate year after high school. So he stepped into this role with Iowa, and I think that him being around so many veterans last year really helped him mature, really helped him understand what it takes to be a successful player at the Big Ten level and a high caliber player that's at the top of the scouting report. So kind of a match made in heaven with his maturity and his background, his upbringing, what he had last year in terms of veterans, and the confidence that Fran McCaffrey and his teammates have in him this year.
As we speak more broadly about this team, defense has been an issue, and of course it's been an issue historically around the Iowa program. How do you see them matching up with Johnny Davis tonight?
Yeah, that's something that another talking point that we've had a lot this year is them on the defensive end. And we spoke to players yesterday via Zoom, and Connor McCaffrey said that they've had stretches where they've been good defensively, which is true. And they've also had stretches where they haven't been as connected. They're towards the bottom of the league in points allowed, but they're pretty high in the league in terms of turnover margin, blocks, steals per game. So matching up with Johnny Davis, I expect to see a lot of Tony Perkins off the bench. He's an excellent defender. Aaron Eulis, Joe Toussaint at the guard position, maybe even Keegan Murray on him as well if he starts to get cooking, which is certainly possible. We saw him score 37 points against a top-ranked team in Purdue the other night on Monday. So it's definitely going to be an all-in effort to stop Johnny Davis. I expect to see a lot of bodies at him. But one thing that Iowa has is athletic guards in the backcourt, so I think is going to be a fascinating matchup.
They've had some rebounding issues as well. During the losing streak, it was really eye-opening how much they were dominated, particularly on the defensive boards, on their defensive end. It seems like it's gotten better here as they put this winning streak together. But what has Fran McCaffrey said about a team that is not as, does not have quite the post presence, nearly the post presence, frankly, that they did a year ago?
Yeah, it's going to take an all-in effort in order to be successful rebounding. Obviously, just looking at their team and the guys that they have in the rotation, Philip Rabach at center, Keegan Murray, his brother Chris Murray, those are kind of like the biggest guys that they have that really play often. And it's going to take efforts from Joe Toussaint, from even Jordan Bohannon and guards off the bench. That's another thing that really stuck out, especially in the Iowa State game almost a month ago, how much Iowa State's guards were out-rebounding Iowa's guards. So it takes an all-in effort. It takes all five guys. One thing about this matchup specifically that I think is really interesting and is maybe different from other matchups that Iowa has in the Big Ten is that Wisconsin statistically is not a strong rebounding team either. Both teams, if you look at where they stand in the Big Ten, they're about even in terms of, offensive rebounding, defensive rebounding, rebounding margin. So whoever is going to win that battle tonight, I think is putting themselves in a great opportunity to win.
Should be a fabulous game. Kennington, I'm going to leave you with this. You're a Georgia grad. What do the Bulldogs need to do to get that elusive national championship on Monday?
It all starts with getting pressure on Bryce Young. Whenever we're talking about Georgia throughout this season, and how great their defense is, it really wasn't the prowess of the secondary. It was how dominant their front seven was and how they attacked the quarterback. We didn't see that at all in the SEC championship game. They had 0 sacks, even though Alabama has been prone to give up sacks and tackles for loss throughout the year. But we saw closer to the Georgia defense that we've seen in the Michigan game. We saw them getting a lot of pressure on Cade McNamara and J.J. McCarthy. So they're able to blitz, get into the backfield, make Bryce Young uncomfortable and affect those throws. Then they'll have a much higher chance to win, but I'm an alum. I'm not going against the Dogs. So I expect the Dogs to get that national championship on Monday, first time since 1980.
All right. Well, it should be a good game on Monday. Really appreciate your time because we are fired up about this game in Big Ten country here tonight. Thanks, Kennington. Enjoy the game tonight.
I will. Thank you so much for having me on.
My pleasure.